I'm inviting you to a workshop where you work on you. Welcome to Clarity Dojo. Work to connect to the best in the world to get clarity. Head over to claritydojo.com. You'll get the latest research techniques, examples, and it takes all of the guesswork out of which questions to ask in order to get the best insight. Get clarity and take action today. Today we have Reid on the show. Is a journalist and a current morning show reporter for WFMZ News in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me, Brian.
It means a lot to me. Allie's a former student. We go way back. I actually had the opportunity to work 4 years, I guess. You were with me all 4 years in high school. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started with your career?
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, I mean, if we're talking career, I would like to say that my career kind of started in high school. We were talking a little bit about this earlier, but luckily, both the middle and high school in Medford, New Jersey, we're lucky enough and are lucky enough to still have TV programs. So that's kind of where I got my foot in the door to even realize that I enjoyed doing things in the broadcast field. And I also was a part of LDTV. I did some sideline reporting. So I thought maybe for a little while that I wanted to go into sports as well. Realized, that really wasn't for me. But I had the opportunity basically all 4 years of high school, just like you were saying, to be able to dabble in a little bit of all types of journalism and learn how every part of the news industry worked. So whether that was in front of the camera, behind the scenes, working the cameras. And then I knew my senior year of high school that I wanted to study broadcast journalism at Emerson College. And that's kind of where everything started in terms of getting into the industry and starting to intern. So that's kind of where it all started, was high school and then going off to college. So I think you had some interesting research and networking opportunities in high school. Do you have any, did you have any moments where you were able to connect with people who were doing the thing that you wanted to do? I definitely had a few opportunities. There was actually an assignment that you had assigned our class senior year of high school. I don't really remember the specifics, but I remembered that I interviewed. I remember the interview that I did because it was my first, what I thought was a major interview for me, a major breakthrough in the industry. Man's name is, he went by at the time, DJ Ridiculous. And I found him because he spells ridiculous the same way I spell my last name, R-E-I-D. He now goes by Reid Stefan. He's grown his business tremendously. He's a DJ that travels the world and goes and plays at these big venues. Anyway, long story short, he was performing at the Madison Square Garden in New York City. I happened to be in New York that weekend for my family, but I thought, hey, if I can reach out and see if I can grab an interview with him, it could be really cool to sit down with him, talk to him about what he does on a day-to-day basis, and put together a package that I could use for my whatever project we were doing in school at the time, my senior year. I met up with him. He agreed to it, not realizing that we were actually going to be doing the interview right before he was performing on stage at Madison Square Garden before the Kiss Jingle Ball concert, which is a big deal. It was the Z100 concert where all these major artists perform. Had a great interview with him, and then he ended up giving me backstage passes, and I got to meet every major artist that night. Taylor Swift was there, One Direction when they were together at the time. I mean, the list goes on and on. But doing that interview, I realized, hey, I want to get into entertainment journalism. That's what I was really passionate about. And I took that one interview that I did, and I realized that was it, and I wanted to do more of it. So I sat my senior year and said, how can I do more of these interviews? And it's hard because how many, major celebrities and singers and whatever want to do an interview with a high school student? But you push yourself enough and you send enough emails, and then, you have that aha moment, and people, all it takes is one person to say yes. And for me, it was Reid Stefan.
I love that story, and I love that you are fearless. So something I really admire about you, Allie, is that you can connect with anyone honestly, like yourself, and kind of fearlessly. So I remember there was something like it was a nice day outside, and like the wood shop was open, and some of the wood shop guys are a little rough around the edges, and you just had like, hey guys, and like you were like interacting with them, and it was just like one of those situations where I was like, you just kind of had this like fearless quality of being able to talk to anyone about anything, and just it was like a one-on-one connection. So I'm actually seeing that with my 6-year-old daughter. So I'm interested to see if she turns to a career in television, maybe interviewing or something. But you always have that quality of being able to like connect with people and like no fear. So that I think it's important.
And even within high school students too, is, at the time I would always ask myself, why am I not in a specific friend group? Everyone had their friend groups in high school, and I really didn't fit into anyone's. I had my friends. I definitely wasn't, a loner. I didn't hang out by myself. I had a ton of friends, but I always wondered, I'm like, I see my friends who are in these groups, and I was never fully a part of those. But I think looking back on it, it was because I just wanted to know everyone. I didn't care who you were. I just loved knowing about people and talking to them. And that's what got me excited, was just having these conversations with people. And if you were a good person, at the end of the day, I was going to be friends with you. And that's, how I've kind of led myself into journalism. I've always kind of thought about that in the back of my mind. So I think that's why I kind of fell into this industry too. But yeah.
Cool. Let me ask you networking tips for maybe somebody who is on the fence or shy about reaching out. Part of what the reason for this podcast is to inspire people to go from 0 to 1, get off the fence, like just send an email. What do you think? What would you advise somebody who maybe might be hesitant to connect with somebody who's doing something that they'd be interested to talk about, or maybe that's the career that they want? Reach out to somebody who's doing that.
I mean, hey, send that email. I can't even say enough how many times I've been told no. I've been told no way more times than I've been told yes in my life, especially in this industry, about multiple different things. It could be about anything. But when I went off to Emerson College, which is where I studied broadcast journalism, I went there for all 4 years. It's a school in Boston. They have a fantastic program there. And when I went to school there, right away, I knew that I wanted to continue entertainment journalism. That's what I was passionate about. And so I took that one interview that I had done with Reid in high school, and I continued that through college. And I started my own segment called The Reid Feed, where I was going and I was talking to up-and-coming artists, because I realized, you know what, I was getting too many no's from these big hotshot celebrities. No one wanted to deal even with a college student on that. So I said, okay, let's take it down a notch, and let's go to the venues where they're bringing in people that are just performing for the first time, maybe bringing in a crowd of 20 to 30 people. And some of those people, I look back 4 years ago, and they are now doing phenomenal on the charts. I mean, it's really cool. So sometimes you get lucky and you interview someone and they end up blowing up. Sometimes, they just do whatever. But I think for me, you need to send those emails. You're going to be told no a million times. It's going to hurt. The first, 30 probably are going to hurt pretty bad. But that's okay, because then you start to line up interviews for yourself. Once you start, meeting the people and talking to other people, sometimes if you make a good impression, they'll help you out and they'll help make a connection for you too. So, I mean, if you're hesitant and you don't send it, those opportunities are never going to come for you. So you have to step outside of your comfort zone, as hard as that might be.
Yeah, I guess it's just that simple. It's rip the Band-Aid off and go. Sometimes maybe you got to put yourself in the situation to have the experience, and if you don't, then the experience doesn't get had. So I guess that I think it's for some it's a big fear, and I'm working on ways to maybe help people understand that anyone can do it. You just have to ask. So, all right, I have a couple questions. The first portion of our show is kind of getting to know what your story was, and then the second half, I'd like to model questions that I recommend people might ask if they're talking to somebody that does what they want to do. So I guess my set of questions that I have on the front half, where is your drive coming from? Like, maybe what is your big why? Like, what's the reason behind what you do?
I've told myself for many years that I want to make it to Good Morning America or Today's Show. And that is a 1 in a million shot. And I realize it's a 1 in a million shot. And the chances of me getting that are very, very slim of ever making it to the big times like that. But when I want something, I push hard for it. And I think you know that too from having me in school.
I love
I constantly push for things. Now, maybe in high school, I was a little more annoying about it, probably a lot more annoying about it. But when I started to mature more in college and into my first and now my second job, I've learned that you have to push yourself and step out of those comfort zones, just like I was talking about with sending those emails. But for me, I think that drive just is constantly in the back of my head, telling myself that I can't give up on the goal that I've wanted for my entire life. I mean, and the fact that it's been now 2 years in the business professionally, and the fact that that goal and dream hasn't gone away, I am not going to give up on that. I started middle of nowhere, Peoria, Illinois. I had no idea where that was on a map. If you had asked me 2 years ago to point to Peoria, Illinois in the United States, I would not be able to tell you where that was. I had interviewed for jobs. That's where I got one. That's where I went. And it was an incredible opportunity. I was there for a year and 4 months. I was their morning reporter for WMBD News in Peoria, where it was a CBS and Fox affiliate, actually. It was 2 different stations. And every single day, I just kept pushing forward. I said, you know what? If I want to get to the next spot, I can't shrug my shoulders. I can't be disappointed where I'm at. And I just got to keep going until the next opportunity comes up. A year and 4 months later, I had an opportunity in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which was too good of an opportunity to pass up. Come along, and here's where I'm at. But it's because I am constantly trying to get to that next goal. And I don't think I'm greedy about it. And I don't think I push extremely hard, because I don't think that's the answer either. I think you have to have a balance of just kind of letting things roll out for a while and being satisfied where you're at. You can't have a negative attitude about it either. Peoria, Illinois probably isn't the greatest place on earth. Definitely wasn't. But, it landed me here. So I'm forever grateful to be in a place like that. So I think that drive is just constantly telling myself, there's going to be something better in the next portion of my life, whether that's 1 month or 1 year from now. And that's kind of just how I keep chugging along.
Well, I think that drive is important. So a couple of just gold nuggets out of that. I think you have to have that. Like for me, one of the best exercises is like, why are you doing something? So you ask yourself many levels of why. So, I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? And then this is why. Why am I doing it? That. So peeling down that onion, it can help you figure out what may be pushing you and the reasons. But I think that one of the other things that you said that I think we all have is knowing that it's going to take time. And you said that even after 2 years, you still have that same goal and same drive. I think that that's a very clear indicator that if you're 2 years in on a professional endeavor, and it's more than 2 years because you did it for 4 years in high school and 4 years of college, and then 2 years professionally post-college, when the drive is still there, there's clarity that you're moving down the right path. And then I think that it's just letting time take its course and take you where you were meant to go. And you're doing such an excellent job. I love the sizzle reel that I saw.
Thank you.
The last piece with the coronavirus and how it's affecting local business. I thought that was awesome. And I think something that you said that was interesting, I think at one of our award ceremonies, was like, you're only as good as your last piece. It's always that next piece that's, I think, part of our drive is the inspiration to tell a great story and find a great story and share a great thing with our friends, family, and huge global audience if you're on the Today Show. So, I think that's a cool way to put it is that letting the time take its course, and that the drive is there. It's always there. You just gotta always, what's that next cool gig that I can get involved with.
Well, I would say too is that I took that experience in high school, right, and I realized that I wanted to continue it in college. So not only was I doing those interviews on my own time, I mean, I was going to school full time. I was working at American Eagle at the time, a burger joint, because I needed to make money for myself, and these college loans aren't paying themselves. And I was interning because I realized in order to make connections in the industry, I needed to be interning at places. And that's a big thing when you get into college, what you need to be thinking about too. And also strategically going to a school that's going to ultimately help you in whatever place that you're living in is going to somehow help you in whatever industry you're in. So those are all important things too when you're looking at colleges to make that deciding factor. But I mean, and people tell me I'm crazy all the time, but when I was in school, I interned at 12 different internships while I was in school over the course of the 4 years, which means I was doubling up doing two internships at times per semester. But I did that because I just loved the industry so much. And I was saying, well, even if I'm not getting paid, I'm still getting incredible experience. And you know what? At the end of the day, hopefully in a few years, those internships that I did will eventually pay off where I can get a full-time job with them. I mean, that would be the goal. Some of the places that I interned, I'd probably never want to work at, and it helps you determine that too. But it's, it's important to find the things that you don't like or don't want about something, because that's still a learning experience as well. So yeah, even if you feel like, hey, maybe I want to switch majors at some point in college, don't feel let down about yourself, because at the end of the day, you realize you tested it out and you didn't like it. So you move on to the next thing, Boom.
I love that. Number one, strategic thinking and choosing a college that will help place and has lots of internship opportunities, or creating internship opportunities prior to going to college. So that's one of the things that I advise is, let's find people who are going to the college. Let's talk to them about, did they have internship experiences at college or also prior to college? Let's find people who are interning prior to college and find places that are doing the thing that you want to do that will allow you to come and participate. I mean, it's there. We're in such a connected culture now that you can find it with a couple clicks and a couple DMs. So I just feel like that message right there is like, be strategic early, like when you're 15, and that's hard for some people, I guess, to break out of their social friend mode. Maybe they don't feel like they can do something like that, but I'm going to prove it can be done. We're going to work together with some young folks, and we're going to understand that is totally something that can be done, because we're proving it with podcast interviews of people who are doing that. So you in college had doubled up on lots of internship, 12 internships in 4 years of college.
Yeah. I mean, it was, there were times where I was crying, and being like, why am I doing this to myself? And of those 12, I think only 2 of them were paid, I'm pretty sure, which is crazy. The fact that, in the year that we are in, that all internships are not paid internships. And I definitely have an issue with that. But at the same time, in the point where I was in my life, I realized I was going to do whatever I needed to do that internship to get my foot in the door. There was one particular internship that I had done. It was my senior year, final internship, 12th internship, Inside Edition. And it was the internship that I had wanted for all 4 years of high school. I had applied for that internship 8 times, 1 time each semester of my college. And I got denied. And finally, I had emailed this lady so many times that I think she finally was like, okay, you get the internship, because I was so persistent with it, and I wanted it so bad. And I wanted it so bad because I knew Deborah Norville, she's the anchor of the show. She's been the anchor for many years now. She is someone that I've looked up to and still look up to in this industry. And she's a huge mentor of mine, incredible person. And I knew that the end all be all, I wanted it to be there. And the crazy thing was, and you're probably going to think I'm insane, because everyone, when they found out at Inside Edition, thought that I was crazy. At the time I was going to school in Boston, the internship was in New York City. There's 4 hours in between Boston and New York City. I would intern at Inside Edition twice a week in New York City. I would wake up at 2 a.m. in Boston, get on a 3:30 in the morning bus that would get in around 7 a.m. I would wait 2 hours in the cafeteria at CBS News in New York City, waiting to start my internship at 9 a.m., would work a full day until 6 o'clock, and then I would get on the 6:30 bus in New York City back to Boston, would get in around 11 o'clock at night, and would wake up the next morning for class. And I did that twice a week. But I did that because I wanted to intern there so bad. And I hope eventually I get to be a correspondent there someday. I mean, that would be the goal. And I hope that the panic attacks and the crying that I had and all of that pays off, because, I mean, I still keep in touch with Deborah Norville and everyone else there at that team. And I think, I'm not saying that anyone should have to go through all of that. That's not what I'm saying here. And that's not the point of this. The point is that if you want something bad enough, don't give up on that, because whether you get that or something else is going to come along at the right time. That's going to be meant to happen. And I did 11 internships before that 12th one to get there. Sometimes it takes all of those internships to get the one that you want. But I don't regret any of the experiences that I went through to get there. So,
go big. I mean, and be persistent. There it is. Asking multiple times, applying 8 times. That's what it takes. So, that's an inspiring story, Allie, and I think that may be like the feature moment that is what ends up in my micro content that goes out to the Instagram pages and all that other stuff. It's the grit and determination to go beyond the lots of no's, and just eventually you'll get it. You did. You got it. And then the many hours of travel and showing up is the way to get to those big experiences. So kudos. It's awesome.
And one final thing on that is, there was the first internship that I had to do, which was a 3 a.m. wake up call, other than the Inside Edition one, which was, just insane traveling back and forth, was KISS 108 in Boston, which is very similar to Q102 in Philadelphia, iHeartRadio station. And the internship that I gotten was for the morning team, Maddie in the Morning, very similar to like an Elvis Duran, and which was over in Z100. Now, they had said, you'll have to wake up at 3 a.m. to be here at 4 o'clock. I literally was in charge of unlocking the doors. So when I had to make sure I was there before the main hosts of the show were there to turn on the lights and all of that. It's crazy. I mean, I basically did all the intern stuff. But I don't ever regret doing that, because I realized I didn't mind waking up that early once I got into a routine. And I realized I had to stay on that routine because I needed to go to bed by 6, 7 o'clock at night to be able to wake up for those crazy hours. But it set me in college on a right schedule. And now, second job later, both of my jobs have been morning reporter jobs where I have to wake up at the same exact time. So it all comes for full circle. It really does. It's crazy.
I was a night owl in college, and it's cool that you were able to maybe connect that schedule very early on. I do really feel that those hours, the 3 to 4 out, 4 to 6 a.m. is like my productive go time before I get to my teaching job, where I can do big thinking, writing, my own personal type of development goals. So I think that those hours is where like some of the most important work happen. I think and it's cool that you were able to connect so early in college, where typically it's like you can get crazy nighttime hours in college. And you were so driven that you connected with all these internships and really built and tailored a schedule that would really connect you with your career goal so quickly. So that's awesome. What do you think your favorite insight is that you're pulling from all of this experience?
Oh, in what regard? You mean just like if there's one takeaway from my industry? Is that kind of what you mean? Or
let's go with that.
And a bit. Sure. Gosh, there's so many different angles that I could take with this question. You have no idea. I think for me, the hardest thing that I have experienced through all of this is that, and this is going to sound a little deep for a second, but I didn't know what a panic attack was until I started my first real job. And I didn't know what that felt like. I didn't know what it felt like to not be able to breathe, or to have your mind go in such a weird place that you just kind of lose all control of your own body. I mean, it's crazy, but that happened because of the stress of my job. I mean, there are a lot of things, and this isn't just in my industry. This is people all across the board nowadays are going through things like this. But I realized I needed to put myself in check a little bit and say, even though I was going through a lot of stress, and still do. I mean, I go through stress every single day. My job is not an easy job by any means. I mean, my parents really don't even understand, even though they kind of do. But they think, oh, she's a reporter who's on TV and gets to tell cool stories. But it's not all as simple as that. I've covered so many stories where I've had to see dead bodies on a day-to-day basis sometimes. I've had to go to really scary places where I didn't know if I was safe enough to be in those places. These are things that a TV reporter has to go through every single day, and that can take a huge toll on your body. But I think through all of that, I realized that you have to maintain a very positive mindset no matter what you do. And even if you aren't extremely happy in what you're doing, realize that there's always going to be an end goal or end whatever to anything that you're doing. And for me, pushing past those hard times was saying there's a light at the end of this tunnel, and I just got to keep chugging along to get there. And don't think that you can get there on your own either, because it's not that way. And if you are that way, you can't be selfish in this. Because I was, for most of high school, I would say, I thought that I could just do anything. And I think a lot of high school students think that way too. Even when you get to college, sometimes you don't even want to listen to your professors, what they have to say. Now I go back and go, oh my gosh, what they were telling me was really smart. You have to take in from people, you have to learn from people, and you have to be around others to build yourself up and get you through situations, no matter what it is. And I know that sounded a little sad there for a second, but I mean, hey, this is the industry that I've gotten myself into. And I know that there are going to be times when it's not going to be easy. You just got to keep chugging along to, get past some of those things.
I think that was well put. I agree. I think it's the mindset can really change everything. When you can put yourself in that flow state, in that overcome obstacles, shake things off, and really just get down to what is the next best thing. What is the next best thing that I can do to move the situation forward? Whatever it is, helping somebody out, connecting with somebody, to like big, huge, network TV, helping millions of people kind of out. I just love that perspective, and I do think the mindset is one of those things that sometimes you can't control, and I think we do see that with anxiety situations. I think everybody has some experience with it. I have I've had similar situations where everything goes haywire, and you're like, what just happened? My brain just did something weird that you weren't expecting. But yeah, you just shake it off, and you move on to the very next best thing that you can do. And back to switching that mindset. How do I get back into that flow state? I think that's what professionals can do. So when you do get hit pretty hard, and whatever it is that happens from life, the ability to kind of like turn it back on again.
And I will say too, is that, as in my industry, I live my life through social media, which is kind of scary, right? I mean, you think anything that you say or do is going to be judged by anyone who's watching your stuff. So with that being said, I am the type of reporter where if you know me and you follow my pages, I'm 100% open about everything that I do. All of except for I have one, private Facebook account. Everything else, all of my social media is public, and I do that on purpose. I do that on purpose because I want to let people in. I want people to understand what I'm doing, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be authentic while doing it. I'm the type of reporter that likes to report a little bit about everything. Personally, I like to do the more fun stories. That's what I like to do. And that it gives the viewers an opportunity to understand who I am as a person. And whenever I can throw in my own little thing about, hey, I do this or I like this, people want to know about you. So, when I'm posting on Facebook, maybe I'm out at a restaurant and I like or don't like a meal that I'm eating. Sometimes I'm posting that saying, go here or don't go here. What are your thoughts on this place? But it's a way to express myself, and social media can be, your enemy, but it can also be your best friend. And in this industry, I've realized that a lot of times it can work in your favor if you are your most authentic self. And the times where I have put on a little bit of a front or even changed my voice in a few ways. I mean, people notice those things. And a lot of times when you are just being who you are, and again, this just isn't on TV. This is just anyone on a day-to-day basis. That is how you're going to get the most connections. You're going to get the most people that are going to back you up. And in my case, viewers, the people that want to be watching me on TV every day.
Yeah. I love that. Authentic self. Yeah, being true. And I always saw that in you. I think that you are, that's admirable to be unafraid and not try to put on the persona of who you think your audience or whoever that is in your circle, needs you to be. Yeah, I think that I think will resonate in any kind of professional environment. So I got a philosophical pivot for you, and we're kind of there anyway. I love this question. I ask my students all the time, what is the highest and best use of time on Earth? It's like an investment question, but it goes a little bit deeper. I think time is one of those commodities that we only have so much time.
Yeah, no kidding.
What's the highest and best use of time on earth?
Well, I'm going to relate this back to my job for a second because I have to do this on a day-to-day basis. And where most of my stress probably comes from here. So to lay out kind of my job for a second, I'm a morning reporter. So I wake up, I go into work by 3:30, I'm done by 12:30. Now I'm live from 5 to 9 in the morning, and I'm live in our noon show. Now from 5 to 9, whatever I'm doing that morning is typically what we call a feature piece. That is something that's set up in advance. I know who I'm interviewing that morning, and I know what I'm doing and where I'm going. So time-wise, those are pretty easy in the morning, being able to get to those things. Now, once that 8:30 hit is done, the 9 o'clock show is over, it is go time. Because come 12 o'clock, I have to turn a completely different story, unrelated to what I did that morning, and go live with it at 12 o'clock. That's 3 hours to shoot, to interview, to put together everything that needs to go into what's going to be aired on live television. And on top of that, have that whole package edited and ready to go, but then look presentable to go on television, which at times can be very difficult to do when you're under a really, tough time restraint there. So when it comes to time in that sense, it's you have to be very strategic about what you're doing and how you're going to get things done. In my case, it's knowing in advance who I'm going to be interviewing, sometimes writing those questions down beforehand. When I'm in the car, those 5 minutes are valuable time where I can be thinking up the questions that I want to be asking the person that I'm driving to. So every second counts in my situation because of how quickly I need to turn that story. And if I don't have that story ready by 12 o'clock, that's on me. And hopefully not getting fired after that. So these are all things that I have to think about. So when I think about what I do in my day-to-day job and thinking about how serious time is in my life, it's constantly being strategic, thinking one step ahead always, and being fully prepared for whatever you need to be doing. Because if you aren't in that, even if you're not fully prepared, you need to be prepared for the unexpected. Expect the unexpected, because in those situations, you have to be adaptable to whatever is thrown at you. And that is going to affect your time too. So you have to manage it very well. I don't know. You can go a million ways, like I said, with this question, but that's probably the best answer I could give you.
Well, I think that's great coming from somebody who has such a time critical position. It's good for the audience to understand that is what this type of career path entails. Like you have this pressure to shape a story regularly. And I understand that we do that daily with teenagers in a television broadcasting program at a high school. It's such a unique experience for somebody. Some people really gravitate towards it, and that I think is part of this profession is to understand that we're there's a constant creative churn. There's this iteration. You're constantly stepping up to the plate, and it's a long season.
Yeah, and going off of that, it's like timing truly is everything. You don't think about that very often, but doing one experience is gonna what leads you to the next. Forgetting to get on the subway might cost you a job. Who knows? I mean, there's a million different things. Like I said, a million different directions you can take with this. But sorry, I don't know if that.
Nope, still here. I got you.
But a million different ways that you can take with this. But time is of the essence, and you have to use it wisely, because if you aren't thinking about that, there's going to be consequences to those actions. That's how I think of it.
I love it. Thank you. I think that is the perfect way to take it. I know that there's lots of angles to play on that, but making the best. And I think you've used the word strategic multiple times tonight, and I think that having that strategy and foresight, and really using time and being fearless and asking, reaching out to have those types of opportunities is something that I think the audience will definitely take away. I think that when you surround yourself with people who do that kind of thing, when you're surrounded with other professionals or your friends or family who are bold or inspire you to take those types of actions that might benefit you or others in big ways, that's that mindset shift, when you surround yourself with greatness. So I'm hoping that this podcast does it. We got a great lady that we're talking to right now. Thank you for all the insight. I'm going to shift into the career clarity questions. So if you go over to claritydojo.com, we have a course called Career Clarity. And in the course, you can get templates for scripts, for maybe the types of emails that you might send or direct messages that you might send to people. Also research tools to be able to find the people that are doing the thing that you want to do. So I'm trying to motivate high school students, because that's who I'm surrounded by, 15-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and also maybe even college students or anybody for that matter who is interested in maybe a career pivot, to reach out to people that are doing it. And then what would happen if you asked all the right questions to all the right people? Would you get to that best path in the least amount of time? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where these questions come from. So I'm just going to model this is what we do in every show. So you would be answering like if I were to be speaking with you about a broadcasting career. So what would you recommend for somebody who wants to do what you do in terms of training? What would you recommend for training?
To get into this field?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
As a high school student, we'll start there. I think that, the sky is the limit. If you think as a high school student you can't get into TV somehow, you're crazy, because you can, and I did it. And even if your high school doesn't have a program, there are other ways that you can get into it. And I think those are, even if it's just reaching out. There was a girl when I was working in Peoria for the CBS station there. We had a girl who was a high school student that wanted to get into the behind the scenes of things. She wanted to be a camera operator. She had literally came and knocked on the door at our TV station, got our attention, and said, "Hey, I only have once or twice a week to be able to do something like this, but I just want to sit and watch what you guys do." We said, "Of course. Are you kidding me?" And she was the coolest girl. And she came, and later that summer when she was done with school, she ended up coming almost every single day just because she wanted to. And now they've offered her an internship, unpaid. But at the end of the day, she's still getting the experience, and now she can put that on her resume. So it all goes back to you can push for what you want, even if you feel like maybe you can't. And that goes for any field. But if you want to start in high school, in journalism, that's the first step, is making those connections young and following through and seeing if that's really what you want to do. And then B, once you realize, hey, maybe this is what I want to do, you find the right school that's going to fit your needs. For me, that was Emerson. I realized that, all 4 years of high school, that's where I wanted to go. Now, the crazy thing was, felt like I was constantly being dealt the worst possible situation. I applied to the school. I got, I think they call it, I had applied early action. They sent me back to regular admission. So that was kind of the first thing that happened. I go through regular admission, and then I was told that I was put on the wait list for the school. And come to decision day, which I believe is in May, I had another school that I had gotten into that I also was passionate about, but definitely was not my number one. And I was a little let down about it, but then ended up getting into the school a couple weeks after decision day came and went. Ended up going to Emerson. And the reason why I wanted Emerson so bad is because they have a great TV program. And they were in I call Boston a small, big city. because it was a place where I felt like I wasn't going to be overwhelmed, but I could still do what I needed to do to get the job done. And maybe in a little bit of an easier way versus being in New York City where everything's kind of thrown at you in this industry. So I guess the part 2 from high school is, with all that being said, is find the school that's going to fit you the most and you're going to feel the most comfortable in doing what you want to do in journalism, because that's very important. Talk to the professors beforehand. Really get a feel for what they do. Maybe that's sending emails back and forth. Talk to the other students. These are the kids that you're going to be working with for 4 years. And a lot of times the journalism programs are a lot smaller than other programs at these universities. Now, that might be a little different if you're going to a Syracuse or an NYU or something like that. But my school, my senior capstone had 10 kids in it. I still keep in touch with those 10 students that are now journalists, reporters all over the U.S. But you need to push yourself in college to really find a place that's going to suit your needs. And then once you're in that place, you need to work hard to land those internships and ultimately, get your foot in the door somewhere. And then I think the side note here is, I could talk, endlessly about getting a job, but the short answer to that is you need to, while you're in school those 4 years, put together a reel that's going to turn a news director's head when they click on it and open it and say, wow, I want to hire that girl or guy. And I actually was very lucky. I had applied to one job in Peoria, Illinois. And it was randomly, I was sitting in class not paying attention one day, had applied because the opportunity, it had just struck my eyes and obviously distracted me from not paying attention in class, and realized I wanted to apply to that job. And a few days later, I was signing that contract. But that was kind of a long story there, but essentially you need to make the right connections. You need to constantly be thinking one step ahead in order to get into that field and ultimately putting together a reel that's going to land you your first job.
So,
that's very intricate.
No, I think that's perfect for somebody who is looking to get started. You mentioned a lot of different schools even there that maybe would be good search points for people who are doing, what you want to do. And then how it does taper off, having 10 students capstone, ultimately, that's a pretty small group of people who do exactly what you do. So it does take a very special talent. I kind of tell my guys that all the time. It's like, look around. There's only like 20 of us in this room right now, but how many people are at this school? So how many of you guys understand that we have the ability to make stuff with media that nobody else knows how to do, and we have this incredible ability to shape these stories and put them in front of an audience every day. So I think that you mentioned a couple things. Did you want to say something there? It looked like you were going to chime in.
Yeah, I'll say one other thing about this is even in this industry, I think it's important to note this because a lot of people don't realize this, and I didn't know it until I went to college. You need to be fully prepared for this job because this job is not all sunshine and rainbows by any means. And I'll never forget my first day, freshman year of college, Betty Jo Cugini. She was my intro to journalism professor. Sat us down. It was a group of maybe 20 of us my freshman year. She comes in. She goes, "Hi, class. I want to say this one thing," and she goes off to basically say something along the lines of, if you cannot handle potentially not having a family someday, maybe even potentially leading to a divorce, as sad as that sounds, if you cannot handle getting underpaid a lot in the industry that you're doing, if you can't handle working overtime, more hours than you can, you'll never work a 9-to-5 in your life in news ever. That is not a thing. Throw that off the table because if you want a normal job, news is not the right profession for you. She goes off for 30 minutes, basically tearing apart the industry. The next day, it was the class was about 10 students versus 20. I never saw those students again. So what I'm getting at here is she's not wrong. She was never wrong in the beginning, and I still will never forget that conversation. because now I know exactly what she's talking about. This industry is not for everyone. And I will say, I won't tell you what I'm making here. I'm making a lot better now what I'm making salary wise. But my first job, I was making $23 a year. $23 a year in Peoria, Illinois. I was paying $600 a month in rent, $300 a month in college loans. And if you do the math, with everything else that I was paying, Wi-Fi, electric, food, that's important. There were times where I was struggling to put food for myself on the table. I mean, 23 a year in Peoria, Illinois qualifies you for food stamps. I was below poverty line. That's ridiculous. And people think as a TV reporter, it's this whole glamorous job, and it's not. But it's a very rewarding job. And, if you work hard enough, you get to the point where you don't have to worry about, living poor, I guess, simply put, anymore. So anyone looking to get in, that's a very big thing that they should understand and know. And I wish that I knew that younger. I don't think it would have changed my opinion or my mind on going into this industry, but for a lot of people, it does. That it's a big deciding factor for them, I
appreciate that honesty there. I think that is another conversation that I'm starting to have more with my students after having these conversations in this podcast. I've spoken with many of my former students who are in various forms of the industry through the years, but I think some of these questions that I have here really start to shake out deeper level, just like you said earlier, what you might not want. So I think sometimes it's more important. It's just as important to know what you want and like what's driving you and your big why, and also what you don't want. And you need to start being able to understand where your no is. Like, no, I don't want this, and I need to remove this because this is a distraction from the thing that I do want. So, before our chat, I think we were talking about social media. Where are those time-sucking things that maybe aren't the most beneficial for you? I think sometimes with high school students, like your friend groups, you're in like your bubble here. Even at college is another tip that I try to give to folks at college, and you did a phenomenal job of like finding internships everywhere. Don't just get stuck in the college crowd and the college work vibe of like a communication school. Like, try to get out and find out what else is going on out there. So all amazing, very honest tips. You do need to understand that there is a big time life, like quality of life, and understanding how much money you need to make until you're on your own, until you're working your job, until you're like by yourself in Peoria, Illinois, and you got your parents to help support you too when times are tough. Some people maybe don't even have that. So I think that's one of those things that you gotta understand what you're getting yourself into. And I think starting as soon as possible to have these kinds of conversations with people who do it would be really beneficial. So I'll move on to the next question. And I think you touched on some, but are there any tools or skills you recommend somebody who does what you do to acquire?
I think the big thing is public speaking. I mean, that's what I do every single day, and I have to perform it well. And I had taken a couple of classes in college to help me with that. I even went to a professor after classes to work on my dictation and how I said certain things, because every word and every sentence matters when you are speaking in front of a camera. When we're on a podcast, it's a little bit different. But when you're in front of a camera and you have thousands of people tuning in to watch what you're saying, and you don't say it in a correct way, those people are going to attack you online hard. And I've gotten, trolls and everything else. But with that,
it's terrible.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, that also comes with the industry, though. You have to think about that. So maybe that's another skill you need to acquire too. Is just being able to take certain things with stride, because things are not going to come easily. So, okay, first thing is public speaking. Take as many things as you can. Do anything you can public speaking. I mean, go to an event, see if maybe you can be a host of something. Working at a restaurant and being a hostess. I mean, doing a job that's going to get you out and talking to people on a day-to-day basis and having those conversations. For me, when I was in college, I was working at a popular burger joint. I was the hostess there. Got to meet some cool people. I did that also when I was living in New York City for a summer. Ended up striking up conversations with Whoopi Goldberg and Steve Carell and all these other people who lived in the Upper West Side, which is where I was working. So sometimes it works in your favor. Sometimes not so much. People just want to eat their food and whatever. But so thinking about constantly talking to people, having conversations, interviewing people if you can. I mean, those are the things that are going to be important for the job. Having a thick skull is the second thing, because I get hate every day on social media, but that's because people like to sit behind their screens and say horrible things. But for every mean thing that you get, there's someone out there that is really enjoying what you're doing. A lot of times people are just writing the negative things and don't take the time to write the positives. So if you can, think about that too. Just a side note, if you ever see something that you like, say something, because you don't know how much that really makes someone's day. But I think, you really have to understand that those people that are saying those things, have nothing else better to do with their lives. But again, that can be a big thing. I know a bunch of people, a bunch of friends of mine that have gotten out of this industry because they couldn't take the heat. And, that's another thing to think about. Those are the two big ones, I would say, but just constantly, pushing and working and doing whatever you can to get yourself out there. And yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of things, but those are the two big things that at least I know, even to this day, that I constantly am working on a day-to-day basis, because, I have to be speaking and dictating what I'm saying. I have to be making sure. And here's another thing. You have to know a little about a lot. We joke about this all the time in TV reporting. You have to know a little about a lot, because you have to, when you come across on camera, make it seem like you know everything about what you're talking about, when in reality, very, very little of the whole picture. But you have to know just enough to be able to get across to your viewers at home that you are fully involved in that story. When you are there, you have to make it seem like you are invested in whatever you're reporting on. That's another thing. You have to be, you have to have whole heart in something, even when you probably don't have any of it at all. But that stays between me and you, because no one else needs to know that.
Except our podcasting audience at home.
Yeah, they can know that secret too.
Well, that's a huge gold nugget. And that's that professionalism, how to pour your heart into something that may not be getting the important box around it. When you're reporting on it, you are that important box around that, that topic, that moment, framing it for your audience, and turning that's back that mindset thing, that be able to turn it on in such a way that is true and genuine. And you do have to convince yourself that this is important sometimes. Sometimes we got a lot rattling around in our heads, but when you can it's a mindset shift, just turn it on, and then it's just so much better when you do that. So cool. That's a really great tip. I think you gave good recommendations of what to do. I like to flip the question negative. Is there anything that you would recommend somebody not to do?
I think you just have to be self-aware, because there's going to be news directors, there's going to be reporters that are not going to be good people. And I've met those people. I'll never say, I'll put those to the grave. I will never say who those people are. But you just have to realize that those people are out there And there are going to be times when, I think what I'm trying to say here is that you constantly need to be fully aware of everything that's around you. And if you're not, and you push things too far, it could almost work not in your favor at times. I think that looking back on a few internships, there were times when maybe I should have gotten the hint of certain things where you don't push it too far, or maybe you need to take the back seat a little bit on certain situations, and realize at times that there's always going to be someone higher than you, and there's always going to be someone below you, but you just got to keep chugging along. So what I would say is what not to do is, it's a learning lesson here. You really just have to, I don't know. This is a hard question. This is a hard one. That's very difficult to answer. But I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to you at all, what I just said. But
no, I think you summarized it. I'll throw you a line there. I think that and I've had this in my career too. So in lots of different ways, because I'm in the education profession, I'm in the real estate profession. I'm doing this type of work where I'm trying to help people through this podcast. Even you do have to be very aware of sometimes bigger things that are going on, and sometimes what's at stake and who's at stake, and who has stake in whatever cogs in the wheel are spinning. So I think that there's some politics that come into play, but it always comes down to doing what's right. And I think that there's an ultimate truth that needs to be, that does end up shaking out. And a lot of times the bigger person involved in those types of situations ends up humbly taking the back seat and understanding the moment that had taken place. There's some learning there that maybe wasn't picked up by the people that were closest to it, but eventually, maybe years down the road, or maybe they'll never learn. Like, I guess, like you said, some people, you're not going to be able to connect or have them be part of your circle.
I think part of
your network.
Part of the word you're looking for is karma. Perfect example of this. And this is not bashing this person. I adore this person with all my being, but it's funny how life works, because, and this isn't the first time I've heard something like this, but and this all goes back to being self-aware, like I was trying to get my point across earlier, just wasn't finding the words here. But I think, and this is a quick story for you. I was interning at a place called Sweetie High, which at the time was partnering with a company called Radio Disney. It's a teeny bopper entertainment news outlet. And they're still around. They're a great company, great people. And at the time, I was interning for them, and I had worked for two hosts, Cassie DeLaura and another reporter whose name is Taylor Audette. Cassie has now gone on to be one of the main reporters for Entertainment Tonight, so she's moved up in the industry. But what's funny is that, for the longest time, I was leaning on Taylor as someone where I was making connections with and trying to get on red carpets with, and I was constantly leaning on her to have those directions. And now she reached out to me a few weeks ago because she's trying to figure out her next step. So someone that used to be my boss is now reaching out to me for her next job, which is crazy. I mean, it's funny how life works like that. But you never know. One day you could be working under someone, and the next day you're that person's boss, which is for any industry. But you never want to burn a bridge, because you just never know how life is going to work out. Yeah,
all good stuff. I mean, these are things that you get hit with, and you just I think the audience, my audience daily is they just don't know what they don't know, and a lot of times don't care. So that's the thing that I'm hoping that this starts to hit some people who are listening to this part very deep in a podcast. Those moments where where your boss is calling you up, and that those roles reverse, they happen. And sometimes that happens even like with your parents. Like that's been some moments where I've gone through some tough stuff. My stepdad, he had a massive stroke, and like I had to like carry my mom through that. And a lot of time, like when that role reverses where you're taking care of your parents, eventually someday, like that's going to happen. You might have to take care of your parents someday. So those things, you'll learn a lot, and just keeping your mind open to, and having that, as you're saying, self-awareness, that it's not just about you. There's some things that are right to do, and that karma is there, and you should, as long as you're doing what's right by people, people come back to you and ask you for your help again and again. So all good stuff. How about we haven't talked about this yet, and I wanted to get to this more in the front of the show, but what's your advice for getting internships in meaningful work, even in high school? So I know that you got a really huge scholarship. Can you tell the audience about that?
Yeah, well, I had a couple of different scholarships. I had one that I had gotten through my township, which I think was around, I think it was $5,000 that I had gotten for that scholarship, which, I mean, gosh, any money helps, right?
Yeah.
Now, I believe it was some sort of creative arts scholarship. They were looking for students in the area that were pursuing, it could be any type of industry that was involving the arts. Mine happened to be broadcast journalism, but because I had been following it so heavily throughout high school, that sparked their attention. I mean, we were very fortunate enough, again, to have the TV program in our school, to have the hyper-local television station, I would call it, LDTV, where I was doing sideline reporting. So, and on top of that, was doing interviews off on the side because of the programs that you had implemented in high school. So I think with all of that being said, that's what caught their attention, and what ultimately I had to write a paper for that and talk about what my goals were. And I think that's important, is that in order to land these scholarships, you really do, even if you don't necessarily know what you want in the future, you need to know at least a short-term goal of where you're going or where you're headed. And that's ultimately important for college, because that's what they're looking for. Especially when you're writing those papers. I mean, you still have that paper that you need to write when you get into any college, and that paper needs to catch their attention. And so that just goes the same when it comes to scholarships. The other major one that I had gotten was through actually the Philadelphia Phillies, which was crazy. I never thought that would happen to me. This is a scholarship that thousands of students applied for, and they picked 4 or 5, I want to say. Now, what I had to do, they were looking for students who were very active in their communities. They were constantly participating in, nonprofit organizations. And we also had to maintain, I think it was a 3.0 GPA. I mean, there was a lot of different things that we needed to qualify in order to even be able to apply for that scholarship. You're really testing me here, because 6 years ago is a long time to remember what these scholarships entailed. But they all pretty much are around the same. I mean, when you're thinking about scholarships, they're looking for people that are active in their community. They're looking for people that are going to be, getting good grades. But even if you're not getting good grades, show them why you're deserving of that scholarship. You might not be the brightest in school. Hey, I wasn't either. I was not a 4.0 GPA student. A lot of my friends were, and it brought me down at times, because I was like, why are my friends that are in the math field and science field, they're just succeeding, and I'm getting C's and sometimes D's or F's in these classes? But I realized it was because those weren't the classes that I was invested in. I was invested in the Englishes, the English classes, the TV tech classes, the more creative things, the arts, gym, whatever, So those were the things that I was more fascinated in, and those were the things that I was excelling in. So when you're looking for scholarships, you need to find the ones that are going to fit you the best. And, I was very active in the community. I was constantly, reaching out to different organizations and volunteering. And even in high school, I had taken part in the Give Kids the World trip, which is a big trip that we do at our school every year, where we go and volunteer down in Florida with children who, are going through severe illnesses, sometimes may potentially be dying, unfortunately, it's hard to swallow that. But I mean, the experience to get there was raising money for that organization and learning that skill set of being able to work very hard at something to achieve that goal of whatever money that we were trying to raise. So get involved and do the best that you can at school. I mean, hey, if you can get the grades, that's an added benefit there. And constantly be looking for a scholarship that's really going to fit you, because there's going to be a ton of scholarships out there. Just like how I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, that you're going to get a million no's until you get that yes. There's going to be a million scholarships that are going to say no to you, but there's going to be one that's going to say, hey, you're the shining light that we're looking for.
I agree. And I think you've already proven this to the point that the audience would need to know. It's going to be lots of no's, but you got to try, and you have to be maybe seeking out the things that fit you, that you're passionate about. And the sooner you do that, the better. And I think that scholarships is one thing. Find the scholarships that fit you. That's great. Those are great. That's great advice, because they're out there. And then I guess, how do you devote the time to do it? Is there a certain? Did you have a strategy for that? Like, were you regimented in planning for scholarships or financial aid? Or
sometimes it was realizing, just by Googling on my own and saying, in my own mind, hey, that's a scholarship that I think would fit me really well. Like, prime example is when I was applying for that Philadelphia Phillies scholarship, I was saying, I was reading that description and I said, this is me to a T. I just knew it. I knew in the back of my mind, there was thousands of students that were going to be applying for this position, but I knew it was meant for me. So because I had that extra spark there and that extra drive to know that this is what I wanted, and I wanted it bad, I was going to do whatever it took to get that. So when writing that essay, that extra drive is just there when you're writing it,
So good.
A lot of research. And sometimes, it's okay to lean on your parents. My brother, who's 7 years younger than me, I feel like a lot of times doesn't feel like he can reach out to my parents for things. I don't know if it's a generation thing. I'm not really sure. But, whenever I needed something, I was not afraid to reach out and ask for help. And my mom helped me. I would be clueless half the time, especially in high school, if it wasn't for the guidance of my parents. And that's huge too.
I love that. And I think you're right on the money with the reaching out for help generation gap. We were talking about that earlier. So I just feel like the 15-year-olds of today are not reaching out for help. There's something there where they're like, even with your parents, like, to reach out to them, to ask them for help, they're ultimately going to be there for you, I think, in most situations. So, wow, that's really good insight. That's probably going to be one of those gold nugget edits that are feature. I release like the long format, and then I do kind of like a highlight edit. I don't know if the format will change over time if we go more just highlights, but I love that point right there. That was perfect. How about there's a couple that are fun coming up. I think we touched on networking a bit, but do you have any like your best networking tip that you can give?
Oh, best networking tip. Never, and I somewhat said this before, but you can never burn a bridge in this industry. You can't. I think thinking back, how I got half my internships is because one person led to another person that helped me get that internship. And that's with hard work and doing what you need to do to get the job done. So with that, I think you just ask me the question one more time. Networking, right? What's the big
your best networking tip. Like we used to divide this, and I'm playing with the questions in the show format all the time. We divided it like best networking tip for college. I kind of asked, best networking tip for high school, and in my opinion, it's just reaching out.
Yeah.
And I think
are we talking industry wise?
And I think for your industry, it's very. You have a job where it requires lots of networking to get stories. So yeah, I guess it'd be interesting to put it in that perspective. Best networking tip for career.
Oh gosh, that's a whole different perspective there. So, and I think that's one that we haven't really touched on yet. So the one aspect of it before we hit that is you constantly need to be thinking about not burning bridges and working to that next goal, because how I landed one internship was getting me to another. So that's just networking 101 right there. You got to be that golden standard, and that can be hard to do, but you just got to put on the smile sometimes and just keep pushing, because that's just how day-to-day life works, especially in a lot of these industries. So that's one aspect of it. Now, if we're talking about networking in terms of getting stories, very different. And it all depends on the different market size that you're in. My first job, I was in what you call a mid-market. So explaining this to someone that doesn't understand, there are 200 markets in the U.S., 200 being, I don't know, I think it's like middle of nowhere, Alaska, honestly, or middle of nowhere, Montana, something like that. Market number one is New York City. I was in market for my first job, market 108. That's Peoria, Illinois. When you're in a small market like that, you have to work in the city that you're in to make connections with those people, one-on-one connections. You go out, you sit at a diner, you talk to the waiters and waitresses. You understand, hey, sometimes you get a really good story out of that. You know how many times I got a story by sitting at the local diner or sometimes a dive bar. It just depends. You just get talking to people. You always, even when you are off the clock, you always are on the clock, because that's when you're finding the best stories. You need to be invested in your community. You have to be involved online. That's in multiple Facebook groups. A big one that stands out if you're in the South Jersey area, you're in Medford 08055. There are tons of groups just like Medford 08055 everywhere you go. But a lot of times you get some of the best stories in those groups, because those are the people that are sometimes upset with something in that town, or excited about something in that town and have something to share. So when you're in a market like that, the best thing to do is get involved as soon as possible in the community and network through that. Now, in my second market where I'm at now, even though I'm in Allentown, Pennsylvania, technically we are Philadelphia market. So with that being said, I'm in market number 4, which is what Philly is. So I took a huge jump. I went from a place that reached 100,000 people in Peoria to now my TV station every single day reaches up to 3 million people. So huge difference in terms of the amount of people that are watching me on a day-to-day basis. It's a lot harder to connect with people that way because you're in a much larger place. But again, it all goes back to being involved online. Sometimes it's, being in those Facebook groups, but also utilizing your own social media to get those people talking to you. So when you're posting on your Facebook page, ask them questions. Sometimes it's as simple as asking them how their days are. People like to comment on anything, and they like to be connected with someone who's, a local celeb, So for them, they enjoy being able to talk to me, and you start that conversation with someone. And sometimes if they like what you're doing enough, they'll be the ones to reach out to you for the story. Even if they see you out in the street, some people like to say, "Hey, I watch you on the news every day." All you got to do is have a positive, energy about you. And sometimes they'll spew off something to you that'll be an incredible story that you never thought would have happened. So just being open and staying connected are really the big things here. Social media is your enemy and your best friend, but in this case, it's your best friend. So,
I think those are great tactical tips. Facebook groups is one of the better networking opportunities, business opportunities too. There's so much that even a post in a local group, people understand what you're doing and what you're up to, and you can like poll and get information back from the community, and there's just so much there. So like even like somebody who's watching this, going to the local Medford 08055 group that is our like local buzzworthy Facebook page, and hey, I'm interested in understanding how to do this type of job. Does anybody out there have any experience? And you would get such a response just by doing that. So that might be another tip in the course that I have, exploring local Facebook groups and just reaching out to see who locally might comment back to you. We're using LinkedIn more so to find people who kind of use the right buzzwords. I think keywords are important too, like what terms you're searching. So if you're using the right industry vocabulary and you're looking at people's LinkedIn pages and pulling the snippets and phrases, you're building an education for yourself. If you're not understanding the lingo yet, then you will. Like tonight we're talking about different markets and that kind of thing. Like so the more you surround yourself with people that are using that vocabulary, industry specific vocabulary, you start to be able to get the education that you need and really connecting with people to help put your portfolio or reel together, so to speak, is huge. It's an opportunity that when you're applying for these positions or you're applying for your college acceptance, if you have a demo reel of these types of interviews where you're recording Skypes with all the people in the business that you've talked to, and you feature that in your acceptance or in your application somehow, I feel like that's a huge leg up too. So I'm hoping that I can get a couple people that are inspired to do this type of work. I have a best and worst, best success, worst mistake.
Best success, I would say is just, honestly, I would say my best success is just doing what I'm doing every single day. I'm very satisfied in what I'm doing. And I know that there's an issue if I'm not. But every single day, maybe it's not the best story that I'm doing, but I'm going to try and make it the best that I can. And every day is brought with a new experience. And it's the cool thing about this industry is that you will never be doing the same thing every single day. No. It doesn't work that way. You aren't sitting at a desk. You are constantly out. You're constantly meeting people. So I would say just best success is just every single day doing what I'm doing. Coolest thing though, if we are saying best success is here, I think probably for me would have been, one of the red carpets that I got to go on. I've gotten to cover some really cool events like the Tonys and the Emmys. Those are the two that stand out in my mind, and I worked really hard to get there. I pushed hard. I ended up getting red carpet access to the Tonys 2 years in a row, which I just thought was just, as a college, I was in college on the red carpet of the Tony Awards. How many college students get to say that they got to do that? Probably not many. And I got to do that with another high school, student who's still one of my best friends to this day, Sam Mitchell. He went to Shawnee with me.
Shout out to Sam.
Yeah, shout out to Sam. He's doing incredible stuff right now too, moving to New York City as we speak. And man, he's just an incredible person. And when we work together, we're a powerhouse. But that's just one example of taking what we did in high school and pushing forward into college and doing what we love to do, and then realizing that we wanted to work together in that. Anyway, so that's just one, those are some pretty cool successes that I've had. The red carpets are probably probably my most favorite moments as a reporter. But again, just telling the stories on a day-to-day basis are incredible. My worst, oh God. I mean, you know what? I don't think I've ever had like a come to moment like shoot, that was really bad. I mean, there's been plenty of times, and still to this day, I think it's important to note that you can mess up. Just don't mess up bad, but you can mess up, and it's always a learning experience. There are times when I'm on TV that I stumble over a word. Hey, sometimes I forget the person's name who I'm interviewing. That's a nightmare, but it happens. Sometimes I can't remember the town that I'm reporting in. The last thing that you need to say when you're sending it back to studio is live in whatever town you're in. I'm Allie Reid, 69 News, back to you. And there are times when I get to that point and I'm like, I don't know where I'm at, and sometimes you're just like, you know what? And then you get the emails and it is what it is. You just got to laugh it off. But you just got to realize that you hope that people realize that you are human and you're going to make mistakes. But this is the time to make it, I'm just 2 years in. I'm still just starting out in this industry. I've got years to go in this industry. And this is the time where if I'm going to make mistakes, this is the best time to let them happen. So, yeah, I mean, I've definitely had my fair share of trip ups and forgetting things and whatever, but you just got to move past it. And you never give up in the middle of a live shot. That's the worst thing that you can do. If I were to give one piece of advice, you never give up on a live shot. You can never walk off. You can never throw your hands up in the air. You mess up, you keep going no matter what you do. And I always say the best thing is if you really can't remember where you are or what you're saying or anything that you were about to just say, look around you and describe what's around you. That's the best thing that you can do because you're still saying something. Might not be the best thing, but at least you're not walking off or going blank on live TV, So it happens, though. You just got to truck past it.
Oh, I love these stories. This is awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing all that. I know that those are some tougher ones, and I always get. I think that's where you get the interesting answers, though. The life stuff, like what's the best stuff, what's the worst stuff, and what pops out of those conversations is usually pretty interesting. How about awards? So this comes from this is kind of like half a question still in the works, but there's a Netflix series, I think it's called Abstract, where they interview all these different artistic type folks, an architect, a graphic designer, the guy who took the Michael Jordan sneaker to next level, like that kind of like design. It's a design related interview style, documentary style show on Netflix. And one of the insights that I pulled from watching that, I shared a lot of it with the classes. We watched some little snippets of it, was that a lot of these people win awards. And when they win the award, it jumpstarts the next thing. Like, for instance, the architect in college, he won whatever award he was applying for, and that got him the budget to build that thing that he designed. And then that was the springboard to all of the crazy other amazing things opportunities that he got. So if you were to maybe like think through some of the awards that might be beneficial for students, either high school, college, or even professionals, what do you think that they might be, and how can you find them?
Well, I'll say the two that I've gotten so far in my career that are both great in this industry. One is, which is sitting over on my TV stand right now that I take great pride in is a Gracie Award. That is a huge award in the entertainment arts industry. So that includes broadcast, acting, singing, don't quote me on that, and a couple of other things. And that includes national television, local television, hyperlocal. There's a bunch of different categories there. I had applied my senior year for interactive media category for my show, the Reid feed that I had put on in college. And the Gracie organization is an all women in media organization. So it's run all by women. And the whole point of it is that they want to uplift women who are also in this industry that might not get recognized on a day-to-day basis for the work that they do. In an industry in broadcast journalism, by the way, that is extremely male-led to this day. I mean, you look at most management positions in a broadcast room, 9 times out of 10, they are men, including at my station. And I wish that changes in the future, and it'd be cool if it did. I mean, I love my news director and general manager now, but it's a fact that you're seeing at a lot of these places. So it's cool. And I'm incredibly honored to have that award. So again, that's a Gracie Award that I have. Now with that, I paid to get nominated for that award. So I believe it was like a $200 entry fee. I submitted my reel, and then they would pick, I think, 3 or 4 nominations of the people that would apply or send in money for it. And then of those 3 or 4, they then pick one person to win the award. And then the show was, the award show was in New York City. That is something that you can apply for in college and when you are in the industry. So mine is a college Gracie Award. Another one that I had gotten was through Emerson College, specifically the Trish Lawless Award. It was a community journalism award. And that was because I was telling stories that impacted my community in some way through feature pieces, what I was doing. And those are the stories that I specifically like to tell. And so I had actually gotten nominated. Someone else had seen the work that I was doing and put me up for that award. So I had no idea I was getting that award. So those are the 2 that I have gotten. Now, what I would say for people that are interested in applying for awards, the big ones in this industry are going to be the Gracies, the Emmys, the Murrows. Those are the 3 big ones, I would say. An Emmy is a big deal. I mean, if you can get nominated for an Emmy, which they do have college Emmys, but professionally to get nominated, even just nominated for an Emmy is a huge deal. That's a big deal. Not even winning, just getting nominated, putting your name out there, that can, just like you were talking about, kind of put that momentum into who you are and the name that you're putting out for yourself. But again, sometimes even if you aren't winning these awards, just getting nominated or having someone see your name and getting people talking about you is great. Unfortunately, a lot of times these awards are hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars to be even putting an entry in for, which can put a hole in your pocket. But, the more awards that you can apply for, the better. But put your best work out there. That should be a motivator where if you aren't getting hits, when you're applying to these things, that just means, step up your A game for the next time you apply.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Great advice on the tail of that as well. I think, getting the no is just as it's good intel, it's good information back. So, applying for things until you get the response, you have to tweak how you're applying. You have to tweak you. You have to change. You be the change. You get the experience. You to step up to the next level and keep tweaking that thing until it's right and you get the right type of response. So instead of giving up. So I love that. The beautiful way to kind of close out our interview today. I appreciate that, Allie. So is there somewhere where we can look you up to find out more about what you got going on?
Yeah, everything on social media, I made it pretty simple. simplicity is key. I'll say one more thing before we close this out. I always say this. I learned this from my professor, and I like to pass this on to other people. Every single day, tell yourself, kiss, kiss, kiss. Keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. If you can keep life simple, everything else is going to come relatively easily to yourself. But just keep that in mind moving forward. But with that being said, social media is at Allie Reid TV. That is on everything. Make it nice and simple for the older folks. And they need to find me on whatever. First and last name, TV, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that, to be able to find me on anything.
Cool. Allie, so thank you so much. This has been a blessing. I'm hoping that this finds people wherever they are and inspires them to keep on, being that fearless person, or maybe they're not that fearless person and they need that little bit of inspiration, and they hear your story and how you broke down some of those barriers that you were having and overcame, and ended up getting those awesome internships and one market to the next huge jump market. Congratulations, and I love seeing what you're doing, and keep sending that stuff out there and helping people out in the field.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Coming from a guy who through high school, I probably should have listened to a little bit more. Because you were very wise with the things that you had taught me, and I didn't realize that until much later on in college and even now. But what you're doing for these students and now on this podcast is really going to help a lot of people.
I hope so, and I appreciate that too, Allie. You did really good in high school, kid. Still doing it.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
All right, lady. Hey, thanks so much. You have a good night, and that's how we're going to end the show, and get some rest.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Bye.
All right, see you, Allie.
Head over to claritydojo.com. You'll get the latest research techniques, examples, and it takes all of the guesswork out of which questions to ask in order to get the best insight. Get clarity and take action today.